So current state, understanding exactly how things work today is imperative so that that you can understand or see. I use understand too much, so that you can see exactly how we want to map that to what we're going to be doing in the future. The software, in some cases, may dictate that. In some cases, you may want to look at your smartest people, your wicked smart people internally and say, all right, this is the way that this maps out today. How can we improve that? How can we eliminate some of the roadblocks that we see in a given process and mitigate that with either software or even just changing the way that we do things? It's not always a software question. It's not always a technology question. Very often, it's a way that we do things internally, and that introspective look at what your current processes are gives you the ammo to be able to really just judge how we're going to make changes happen.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, we've seen that with many of our clients right now, that process mapping exercise that I was just describing that we're doing post implementation. Do that up front and do it along the way. To the point of the message that came across the screen, it really is important that you link your future expected processes to the current state, but the current state mapping is important.
Yeah. And when you're looking at the future state, you're obviously in phase 0, not going to get down to the granular screen by screen instructions on how to perform transactions. That's not the level of detail we're getting at in phase 0. Where we're getting at is more macro, looking at just in general, how are our processes going to work? How do we want them to look? And you start making decisions that if you don't make them early on in phase 0, it ends up slowing down the project and creating delays later on. So for example, if I'm a multinational organization and I've got a dozen different locations, let's just say, I may have acquired several of those dozen locations and they've got different ways of operating. And I'm using this project, or I want to use this project as a way to create standard processes across those dozen locations. So you want to take that time up front to figure out how are we going to change those 12 locations into one common set of business processes at that macro level. And that alone, even without getting down in the details of how you're going to do it and configure it in technology, even just making the macro decisions around how our processes are going to work, that just takes time. And that's where the internal alignment becomes so important. And you might as well, I hate to say slow things down, but you might as well work through that messy process of defining future state processes up front so that when you start deploying technology, things are more clear. So your technology consultants know exactly how they should be designing and building software. Your project team knows what the future state is going to look like, all that stuff.
You're exactly right. The way that these things come together, when we're talking about transformation, right? We've got an equation that we often cite, which is old processes plus new technology NT equals expensive old processes. That really just kind of refers to the whole process of improving things for your organization as you go through this digital transformation. Transformation is all about change, right? Transformation is current state to a future state that is much better optimized future state. So it's going to happen along the way. You have to have internal, people, your internal teams that are going to be dictating how this works, how this comes together. But it's an iterative process that goes along the whole linear transformation process. So I think that's a great question that was asked.
Yeah, absolutely. And shifting gears from business processes to data.